What happens when the man who has everything discovers the one thing he lost is bigger than he ever imagined? For Alexander Sterling, a billionaire whose life was a fortress of glass and steel, a simple business dinner was about to become the epicenter of an earthquake that would shatter his world. He thought he'd buried the past, buried the memory of the only woman he ever loved. But in a crowded restaurant across a sea of strangers, he saw her. And she wasn't alone. With her were three small children, three identical ghosts from a life he never knew he had, three 5-year-old reasons why his carefully constructed empire of success was about to feel like a prison of regret. This isn't a story about money, it's about the debts the heart can never repay. The Air in Veritas, a sleek Michelin-nodding restaurant in downtown Chicago, was thick with the scent of truffle oil and ambition. Alexander Sterling, CEO of Ether Solutions, sat at the head of a long, polished mahogany table. The city lights glittered like a fallen constellation through the panoramic windows behind him, a kingdom he had conquered, one ruthless acquisition at a time. He was 38, with a jawline as sharp as his business acumen, and eyes the color of a stormy North Atlantic sea. He was closing a deal tonight, a multi-billion-dollar merger that would cement his legacy. His focus was as always absolute. He laughed at a joke made by a portly Japanese investor, the sound smooth and practiced. As he lifted his glass of Macallan 25, his gaze drifted absently across the restaurant floor. It was a meaningless scan, a predator surveying his territory. And then it wasn't. His eyes locked on a waitress moving between tables. She wore the restaurant's simple black uniform, her auburn hair pulled back in a severe, functional ponytail. But there was no hiding the elegant line of her neck, the determined set of her shoulders, the way she moved with a grace that seemed entirely out of place amidst the clatter of plates. The glass paused halfway to his lips. The laughter in his throat died. His blood ran cold. Clara. It couldn't be. Clara Vance, his ex-wife. The woman who had vanished from his life 6 years ago, leaving behind nothing but a 2-sentence note on the cold, empty bed of their penthouse apartment. "I can't do this anymore, Alex. Don't look for me." He had. He'd used every resource his immense wealth could buy, but she had disappeared as if she'd never existed. The wound, long scarred over, ripped open with breathtaking violence. He watched her, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. She was thinner, with fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes that hadn't been there before. But it was her. The universe in its infinite cruelty had placed her here serving overpriced sea base to men like him. The investor next to him, Mr. Tanaka, was speaking, and the synergy, Mr. Sterling, is undeniable. Alex heard the words as if from underwater. He nodded, a purely mechanical gesture. His entire being was focused on Clara. She was clearing a table near the back, her movements efficient, her face a mask of polite neutrality. And then, she wasn't alone. A small bus cart, usually used for dishes, was being pushed by a young boy. He couldn't have been more than 5. He had a mop of unruly dark hair and a serious expression as he meticulously placed a fork onto the cart. Beside him, an identical boy tried to lift a water pitcher that was clearly too heavy, a look of fierce concentration on his face, and holding onto the cart, chattering away to the waitress. To Clara was a little girl with the same auburn hair as her mother, tied into 2 bouncy pigtails. Alex felt the air leave his lungs. He wasn't just looking at children, he was looking at a reflection. The 2 boys, they were him. It was like looking at a childhood photograph brought to life. The same dark wavy hair, the same brow, the same determined set to their small jaws. Even from across the room he could see it. When one of them looked up, catching the light, Alex's breath hitched. The boy's eyes were a startling familiar blue. His blue. His mind a finely tuned machine for data and logic short-circuited. 6 years since she left. These children were 5. The math was a brutal, simple equation. Excuse me, he mumbled, pushing his chair back abruptly. The scrape of wood on stone silenced the table. Every head turned towards him. Sterling, is everything all right? His COO. Marcus asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Alex didn't answer. He was already moving his long strides, eating up the distance across the restaurant. He felt 100 pairs of eyes on him, but they didn't matter. The only universe that existed was the small domestic scene unfolding by the service station. Clara looked up as he approached, her hands freezing on a stack of plates. Her professional smile faltered, then dissolved into pure, unadulterated shock. Her face went pale, the color draining away until her freckles stood out, like flecks of cinnamon on parchment. Alex, she breathed, her voice a ghost of a whisper. It was the first time he'd heard her say his name in 6 years. Clara, he said, his own voice, rough, unfamiliar. His eyes weren't on her. They were fixed on the 3 small faces, now staring up at him with wide, curious eyes. The little girl hid behind Clara's legs, peeking out. One of the boys stood his ground, puffing out his chest in a comical display of bravado. The other one simply tilted his head, his gaze analytical, unnervingly intelligent. "Mummy," the brave one said, his voice clear and high. Who's that man?" "Mummy." The word struck Alex with the force of a physical blow. Clara recovered first. A wall slammed down behind her eyes, her shock replaced by a cold, fierce defensiveness. She put a protective hand on each of her son's shoulders. "He's no one," she said, her voice tight and low. Her gaze locked on Alex. "He's just a customer who is lost." "Lost?" Alex's laugh was a bitter, broken sound. "Clara, what is this?" He gestured towards the children, his hand trembling slightly. "Who are they?" "They are my children," she snapped, her chin lifting in defiance. "It's none of your business." "None of my business." He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a dangerous hiss. "That boy," he pointed to the one with the analytical gaze, "has my eyes, and that one," he gestured to the other, "has the same mole right below his hairline that I do. Don't lie to me. Not about this." Panic flickered in her eyes, raw and real. "You're mistaken. You need to leave. You're making a scene." A manager, a harried-looking man named Gerard, was now hurrying towards them. "Is there a problem here, sir?" Alex ignored him. He crouched down slightly, trying to get on the children's level. His billion-dollar merger, his reputation, his entire life's work felt like smoke in that moment. All that was real were these 3 miniature versions of himself and the woman who had stolen them from him. "What are your names?" he asked them gently. The little girl Chloe whispered her name from behind her mother's leg. The brave one announced, "I'm Leo." And the quiet, observant one said, "I'm Noah." Leo, Noah, and Chloe. The names felt foreign and yet achingly familiar. "Those are beautiful names," Alex said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. Clara grabbed his arm, her fingers digging in like talons. "Stop it, Alex. Get out. Get out of here right now." Her voice was shaking with a desperate fury. "You gave up any right to us 6 years ago. Voter. I never knew there was an us to give up," he countered, his voice rising. The entire restaurant was now silent, watching the drama unfold. His business partners looked on aghast. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your table or leave the premises," the manager insisted, stepping between them. Alex stood up, his towering height seeming to diminish the other man. He looked from the manager's anxious face to Clara's terrified one, and then back to the 3 children who were staring at him as if he were a creature from another planet. He pulled out his wallet, throwing a black Centurion card onto the manager's chest. "Cover my table's entire bill and their inconvenience." He looked back at Clara, his eyes burning with a mixture of rage and profound soul-crushing heartbreak. "This isn't over," he promised, his voice low and guttural. "This is just the beginning. He turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the hushed whispers, the stunned faces of his colleagues, and the wreckage of the life he thought he knew. The cool night air hit him, but he didn't feel it. He felt nothing but a roaring void inside him, a space that he now realized was shaped exactly like three small children. The next morning, the sun rose over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold. But Alexander Sterling's world was grey. He stood in his penthouse office on the 95th floor of the Sterling Tower, a monument to his success that now felt like a mausoleum. He hadn't slept. The image of the triplets of Clara's defiant, terrified face was seared onto the inside of his eyelids. Leo, Noah, and Chloe. He'd spent the night piecing together a fractured timeline. He and Clara divorced 6.5 years ago. The split had been his fault, he'd always known that. He was consumed by the launch of Ether Solutions, working 20-hour days fueled by caffeine and ambition. He'd missed anniversaries, birthdays, and finally, the one phone call that mattered. Clara had been in a minor car accident. She was fine, but she was scared, and she had called him. He'd seen the call, silenced it, and told his assistant to handle it. He was in the middle of a crucial investor pitch. By the time he got home that night, she was gone. The note was all that remained. His search had been frantic at first, then desperate. But she had been clever. She'd used cash, left no digital footprint. Her family, who had never approved of him, claimed to have no idea where she was. Eventually, the trail went cold, and the ache in his chest hardened into a scar of regret he carried every day. He'd told himself she'd wanted a different life, a simpler one, and he'd let her go. He never imagined she'd taken the most important part of him with her. "Sir," a voice said from the doorway. It was Harrison, his head of security, and a former Mossad agent who handled Alex's more delicate private matters. Harrison was a man of few words and unnerving efficiency. "Find her," Alex said, without turning from the window. "Everything. I want to know where she lives, where she works. I know that already. Where the children go to school, who their doctor is, what brand of cereal they eat. I want to know every breath they've taken for the last 5 years, and I want to know who he is." "He?" Harrison asked. "There's always a he," Alex said, his voice laced with venom. "No woman raises 3 children alone if she has a choice. Find him." Within 48 hours, Harrison delivered. The file was thin, a testament to the simple, off-the-grid life Clara had built. She lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Oak Park, a quiet suburb, worlds away from the downtown glitz. She had worked a series of low-wage jobs before landing the waitress position at Veritas 6 months ago. The triplets were enrolled in a local public elementary school, and there was indeed a he. His name was David Miller, a high school history teacher. Photos showed a man of average height and build with kind eyes and a warm, easy smile. He was pictured with the triplets at a park, pushing Chloe on a swing, ruffling Leo's hair. He was in photos from their 5th birthday party, holding the cake. In one gut-wrenching photo taken through a long lens, David was seen kissing Clara on her forehead as she leaned against him on her apartment balcony, looking tired but content. The report stated he was a constant presence in their lives but did not live with them. He was her boyfriend of 3 years. A primal rage, hot and possessive, surged through Alex. This teacher had been playing father to his children. This man had tucked them into bed, read them stories, kissed their scraped knees. He had been living the life Alex didn't even know he'd lost. His first instinct was to destroy him. A man like David Miller would be easy to crush. An anonymous tip to the school board, a financial pressure play. Alex's mind, a weapon of corporate warfare, presented a dozen scenarios, but he stopped himself. That would only terrorize Clara, drive her further away. He needed a different strategy. He decided on a direct assault. He found her a few days later, picking up the children from school. He waited in his sleek black Audi, a shark in a sea of minivans. When she emerged holding Chloe's hand while Leo and Noah trailed behind her, arguing about a superhero, his heart did a painful clench. They were so real, so vibrant. He got out of the car. Clara saw him, and her body went rigid. She immediately herded the children behind her, a lioness protecting her cubs. "What do you want, Alex?" she said, her voice low and tense. "We need to talk," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We have nothing to talk about. I told you to stay away from us." "They're my children, Clara." He said the words feeling both insane and absolutely true. "I know they are. A paternity test will prove it in a heartbeat." Fear warred with anger in her eyes. "You will do no such thing. You will not subject my children to that. Their father is a man who loves them, who is there for them every single day, not some ghost who shows up 5 years late." "You're talking about the teacher, David." The name felt like acid on his tongue. Clara flinched, surprised he knew. "His name is none of your concern. He's more of a father than you could ever be. Give me a chance to prove you wrong." He pleaded, the unfamiliar emotion of desperation making him feel weak. "Let me be in their lives. I'll provide for them. Anything they want. The best schools, homes, vacations. Oh, of course," she scoffed, her laugh sharp and bitter. "Here comes the sterling checkbook. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? You think you can buy my children. You think you can buy back the last 5 years. You can't, Alex. They have a life here, a happy, stable life. You will not wreck it with your money and your drama." "This isn't drama. This is my life. My family," he shot back, his voice rising. Leo, ever the brave one, stepped out from behind his mother. "Leave my mommy alone," he yelled, his small fists clenched. Noah stood beside him, a silent, supportive shadow. Seeing his son defend his mother against him was a new kind of agony. Alex knelt, trying to appear less threatening. "Hey, buddy, I'm not trying to hurt your mum. I want to get to know you guys." Clara pulled them back. "Don't talk to him. Let's go." She started walking away, her pace brisk. Alex stood up, feeling helpless. "Clara, please don't do this." She stopped her back still to him. "You know, for years I was terrified you'd find us," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "That you'd come and try to take them. But now I see I had it all wrong." She turned to face him, and he was shocked to see tears glistening in her eyes. "You don't want them, Alex. You want to win. They're just another acquisition to you, another thing to possess. You don't love them. You can't. You don't even know how." With that, she turned and hurried away, leaving him standing alone on the sidewalk as the school bell rang, signaling the end of another day he had missed. Her words echoed in the sudden silence, sharp and precise, cutting deeper than any corporate rival ever had. "You don't even know how to love." Was she right? He had built an empire, but what was the cost? As he watched the four of them turn a corner and disappear, the reality crashed down on him. Clara wasn't just protecting the children from him, she was protecting them from the man he had become, a man who had traded his heart for a crown. Defeated in his direct approach, Alex retreated to the world he understood: strategy and leverage. He couldn't force Clara to accept him, but he could make her life easier, hoping it might soften her resolve. It was a clumsy, misguided attempt at penance. Through a shell corporation, he bought the debt of her apartment building. The next day, a notice went out. Rent was being reduced by 50% due to a new community enrichment grant. He had her supervisor at Veritas discreetly fired for a fabricated infraction and arranged for Clara to be promoted to his position, doubling her salary and giving her more stable daytime hours. He set up an anonymous trust fund for the triplets, enough to guarantee their college education and beyond. He thought he was helping. He thought he was showing her he could provide, that he cared. He was wrong. About a week later, his private elevator opened directly into his office, and there she was standing in front of his desk, vibrating with a rage so pure it seemed to make the air shimmer. She threw a thick envelope onto his desk. It was the notice of her promotion and a cashier's check. "How dare you?" She seethed, her voice low and dangerous. "How dare you interfere in my life like this?" Alex was genuinely taken aback. "I was trying to help, Clara." "Help?" She laughed, a sound devoid of all humor. "This isn't help, Alex. This is control. This is you, the puppet master, pulling strings because you can't stand that I've built a life without you, without your money. I don't want your blood money. I quit my job, and this check is for the difference in rent you so generously erased. I don't want anything from you." "I did it for the children," he insisted, standing up. "So you'd have more time, less stress. If you wanted what was best for the children, you would leave us alone." She screamed, her composure finally cracking. "You have no idea what you're doing. You just bulldoze your way through everything, expecting the world to reform in your image. Because you won't let me in. You lied to me for 5 years. You stole my children." He roared back, the injustice of it all boiling over. "Why, Clara, why wouldn't you tell me? Even if you hated me, they deserved to know their father." Tears streamed down her face, now hot and angry. "Deserved? You want to talk about what people deserve? Where were you when I called you from the emergency room? Not the little fender bender, Alex. 6 months before that. When I was bleeding and terrified, and the doctor told me our baby was gone." The air was sucked from the room. Alex stared at her, his mind refusing to process the words. What are you talking about? A baby?" Her face crumpled, the rage dissolving into a raw, ancient grief. "Yes, a baby. Our first baby. I was 12 weeks pregnant. I lost it. I called you over and over. You were in a meeting. You never even called me back. Your assistant sent flowers. Flowers, Alex. Like I'd had a damn tooth pulled. I grieved for our child alone in that big empty apartment while you were out conquering the world. I held it all inside, and it hollowed me out." He sank into his chair, the strength gone from his legs. He remembered the call. He remembered being annoyed at the interruption. He remembered the flowers, a standard order his assistant had for any minor personal inconvenience. The memory, once trivial, was now monstrous. I didn't know," he whispered, the words utterly inadequate. "Of course you didn't know," she sobbed. "You were never there. You were a ghost in our marriage. And when I found out, just a few weeks after I left you, that I was pregnant again, with the triplets, my first thought wasn't joy, it was terror. Terror that you would do to them what you did to me. That you would be an absent father, a ghost in their lives, disappointing them over and over. Or worse, that you would try to take them, use your power to fight me for them. I couldn't risk it, so I ran. I chose to have nothing, so they could have a peaceful life, a life with a mother who was always there, and eventually, a man who showed up. David, the teacher, the man who showed up. The words twisted in his gut. So I did it all on my own. She continued, her voice gaining a steely strength through the tears. The sickness, the fear, the 36-hour labor. I did it alone. I worked 2 jobs with them, sleeping in their car seats in the back room. I learned to fix a leaky faucet and patch drywall. I built a life, a real one. And then David came along, and he saw me. He saw the children. He didn't see a burden. He saw a family. He loves them, Alex, and they love him. That is the life you are threatening to destroy. The silence in the office was absolute, broken only by her ragged breathing. For the first time, Alexander Sterling had no counter-argument, no strategy, no move to make. He had been checkmated by a truth he never knew existed. He hadn't just lost Clara, he had driven her away through a neglect so profound it had bordered on cruelty. The triplets weren't a secret she had kept from him. They were a family she had built despite him. He looked at the woman before him, no longer just his ex-wife, but a warrior who had survived a battle he hadn't even known she was fighting. His empire of glass and steel felt like a joke. The real fortune, the real legacy had been within his grasp, and he had let it die from neglect. Clara, he began, his voice cracking. I don't, she cut him off, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Don't say you're sorry. It's 6 years too late for that. She turned and walked towards the elevator, her back straight, her dignity a shield. Before the doors closed, she looked back at him one last time, her expression not of anger anymore, but of a deep, sorrowful pity. You wanted to know why I didn't tell you, she said softly. It's because I wanted my children to be loved. And Alex, you had forgotten how. The doors slid shut, leaving him alone in the suffocating silence of his success, a king in an empty castle, finally understanding the true nature of his poverty. The aftermath of Clara's revelation left Alex adrift in a sea of guilt. He dismantled his clumsy attempts to meddle in her life. The shell corporation that owned her building was dissolved, and ownership was transferred to a legitimate property group with instructions to maintain the current rent. He stopped the surveillance. He did nothing. For the first time in his adult life, Alexander Sterling accepted defeat. He respected Clara's wishes and retreated, leaving them in the peaceful world she had so fiercely protected. Weeks turned into a painful, quiet month. He threw himself into his work, but the fire was gone. Board meetings seemed pointless. Market projections were meaningless static. Every night he would go home to his silent penthouse and stare out at the city lights, haunted by the faces of 3 children he couldn't know, and the memory of a 4th he had unknowingly lost. He was in a late-night negotiation with a German tech firm when his personal cell, the one only a handful of people had the number for, rang. He ignored it. It rang again, insistent. Annoyed, he glanced at the screen. The caller ID was blocked. He almost declined it, but some instinct made him answer. Sterling. Is this Alexander Sterling? The voice was female, panicked. Yes. Who is this? My name is Sarah. I'm Clara Vance's neighbor. Something's wrong. One of the boys. Leo. He collapsed. Clara's with him in the ambulance on the way to Chicago General Hospital. She asked me to call you. She tried your office, but no one would put her through. Alex's blood turned to ice. Is he okay? What happened? I don't know. He had a fever and then he just fell. He looked so pale. Please, you have to go. She's alone and she's terrified. He was already on his feet, his briefcase forgotten on the table. I'm on my way, he said, hanging up. Gentlemen, he announced to the stunned German executives. This meeting is over. We'll reschedule. He was out the door before they could respond, his mind a maelstrom of fear. The drive to the hospital was a blur. He broke every traffic law, his heart pounding, in a frantic rhythm against his ribs. She asked me to call you. Those words were a lifeline in his panic. After everything, when her world fell apart, she had reached out to him. He found her in the pediatric emergency waiting room. She was huddled in a plastic chair, her face ashen, her body trembling. David the teacher was with her, his arm around her shoulders, murmuring comforting words. The sight of them together sent a pang of jealousy through him, but it was instantly eclipsed by overwhelming concern. Clara, he said, his voice gentle. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. She stood, seemingly wanting to run to him, but she stopped, caught between the 2 men who represented the 2 halves of her life. Alex, thank you for coming. David stood up, extending a hand. I'm David Miller. We haven't been properly introduced. His handshake was firm, his gaze direct and filled not with hostility, but with a shared anxiety. How is he? What did the doctors say? Alex asked, his attention fixed on Clara. They don't know. She choked out a fresh wave of tears, spilling. He has a severe fever. He's anemic. His platelets are dangerously low. They're running tests. They've been saying words I don't understand. Pancytopenia. Bone marrow. Fala. For the next few hours, the three of them existed in the sterile limbo of the hospital. Noah and Chloe were with the neighbor Sarah. David was a rock of quiet support, getting coffee, dealing with nurses holding Clara's hand. Alex felt like an intruder, a powerful man rendered completely impotent. All his money, all his influence meant nothing in the face of a child's mysterious illness. He could buy the hospital, but he couldn't make Leo well. Finally, a doctor, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Eris, came out to speak to them. Her expression was grave. "Mr. Miller, Miss Vance," she began, then glanced at Alex. "He's their father." Clara said the words, slipping out heavy with exhaustion and fear. It was the first time she had acknowledged it out loud to a stranger. Dr. Eris nodded, her expression softening with understanding. "We have a preliminary diagnosis. We believe Leo is suffering from severe aplastic anemia. It's a rare condition where the body stops producing enough new blood cells. Essentially, his bone marrow is failing." The clinical words hung in the air, devastating in their simplicity. "What does that mean? What's the treatment?" Alex demanded, his voice strained. "The most effective treatment, and in a case this severe, the only curative option is a bone marrow transplant," Dr. Eris explained. "We need to find a matching donor immediately. Siblings are often the best bet." Hope flickered. "He has a brother and sister, identical brother," Alex said quickly. "We'll test them, of course," the doctor said gently. "But even with identical twins, the specific HLA markers for a successful transplant aren't always a perfect match. The best chance comes from a biological parent. We'll need to test both of you as well." The room went silent. David squeezed Clara's shoulder. Alex's gaze met Clara's across the small space. The lie that had defined their lives for 5 years was now stripped bare by medical necessity. There was no more pride, no more anger, no more debate. There was only Leo fighting for his life in a room down the hall. "Test us," Clara said, her voice a reedy whisper. "Test all of us, whatever it takes." The next 24 hours were an agonizing wait as the lab processed the HLA typing. Noah and Chloe were brought in scared and confused, and bravely endured the blood draws. Clara was tested. David waited with the other children, a pillar of strength in the background. Then it was Alex's turn. As the phlebotomist drew his blood, he stared at the vial, a vessel containing the very proof of his connection to the son he barely knew. The results came back the following evening. Dr. Eris gathered them in a small consultation room. "We have the results," she said, her eyes on the file in her hands. "Noah and Chloe are not a match. I'm sorry." Clara let out a small wounded sound. Dr. Eris continued, "Clara, you are a half match, which is expected for a parent. We could proceed with you as a donor, but it carries higher risks of rejection and complications." She paused, then looked directly at Alex. The entire world seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Sterling," she said, a small professional smile touching her lips. "You are a perfect match, a 10 out of 10. It's the best possible outcome we could have hoped for." Relief washed over Alex so powerfully, his knees felt weak. He could save him. After all his failures, all his neglect, all his mistakes, the one thing that could save his son's life was the very biology he had passed on to him. It was a gift, a chance. He looked at Clara. Her face was a canvas of conflicting emotions, overwhelming relief, gratitude, and a profound, heartbreaking vulnerability. The wall between them, built of lies and pain and years of silence, had finally crumbled. In the face of their child's mortality, they were no longer ex-spouses or adversaries. They were just a mother and a father. "When can we do it?" Alex asked, his voice clear and steady for the first time in days. "Tell me what I need to do." The bone marrow transplant was scheduled for the end of the week. In the days leading up to it, the hospital became the axis around which their shattered lives began to realign. Alex underwent a battery of physical exams and consultations. He cleared his schedule completely, handing over the reins of his multi-billion-dollar company to his COO with a shocking indifference. Ether Solutions, the monolith he had sacrificed his family for, now seemed like a distant, trivial thing. His parents, Richard and Eleanor Sterling, caught wind of the situation and descended upon the hospital like a cold front. They were wealthy, old-money Chicagoans who had always viewed Clara as an unworthy social climber. They saw the triplets not as grandchildren to be loved, but as a complication, a potential stain on the Sterling legacy. "Alexander, this is a circus," his mother said, her voice a low, disapproving hum as she surveyed the public waiting area. "You need to get this child moved to a private wing, and you need to establish your legal rights immediately. This woman kept your heirs from you for 5 years. They are not heirs, Mother. They are children. And Leo is my son." Alex said, his voice hard. "And her name is Clara. She's their mother. You will show her respect." His father was more pragmatic and more brutal. "Son, once you've done this donation, you need to let our lawyers handle it. We'll file for full custody. It's an open and shut case. She hid them, she's financially unstable. No judge would rule against you." Alex looked at his parents, at their cold, calculating faces, and saw a reflection of the man he had been. The man who saw everything as a transaction, a battle to be won. He felt a profound sense of revulsion. "No," he said, the word ringing with finality. "There will be no lawyers. There will be no custody battle. You will not use my son's illness as leverage. This is my family. You will either accept all of them, or you will not be a part of it. The choice is yours." He walked away, leaving them stunned into silence. It was the first time in his life he had ever truly defied them. He was drawing a new line in the sand, and his family, Clara, Leo, Noah, and Chloe, were on one side, and the Sterling Empire was on the other. The night before the procedure, he found Clara sitting by Leo's bedside. The boy was small and frail in the large hospital bed, sleeping fitfully amidst the tangle of wires and tubes. David had taken Noah and Chloe back to the apartment to give them a semblance of normalcy. For the first time, Alex and Clara were truly alone. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her. For a long time, they just watched Leo breathe. "Thank you, Alex," she whispered, not looking at him. "There are no words. You're saving his life." "He's my son, Clara," he said softly. "You don't have to thank me for this." He paused, gathering the courage for words that were 6 years overdue. "I'm the one who's sorry, for everything, for the flowers. God, Clara, the flowers. For not being the man you married, for not being there when you lost our baby. I was a fool. I was so busy building a kingdom, I didn't realize my treasure was in my own home. I'm so sorry." She finally turned to look at him, her eyes welling with tears, but these were different. They weren't born of anger or fear, but of a slow, painful catharsis. "I'm sorry too," she said. "I was so scared and so hurt. I robbed you of 5 years with them. I told myself it was for their own good, but maybe it was just to protect my own heart. It was wrong." Shendatov. In the quiet hum of the hospital machinery, the years of bitterness began to dissolve. They talked for hours. She told him about the triplets' personalities. Leo, the brave and impulsive leader. Noah, the quiet, thoughtful observer and artist. And Chloe, the bubbly social diplomat who had both her brothers wrapped around her little finger. She told him funny stories about their toddler years, the struggles, the joys. He listened, soaking in every detail, a man starved for a history he never knew he had. He didn't talk about his company or his wealth. He talked about his own lonely childhood, about the pressure from his parents, about the emptiness he'd been trying to fill with success. For the first time, they weren't exes or adversaries. They were two flawed people, finding common ground in their shared love for their children. The next day, Alex was prepped for the marrow extraction. It was a painful, draining procedure, but he welcomed the physical discomfort. It felt like a small, tangible penance for his years of emotional absence. As they wheeled him out of the recovery room, groggy and sore, the first person he saw was David. The teacher was standing awkwardly by the door. "Heard it went well," David said, his expression unreadable. "So they tell me," Alex managed. There was a tense silence. "Look," David said, running a hand through his hair, "I'm not going to pretend this is easy. For 3 years, I've loved those kids like they were my own. And I love Clara." "I know," Alex said, his voice hoarse, "and I've seen how you are with them. You're a good man, David. You were there when I wasn't. That's a debt I can never repay." "This isn't about debt," David said, shaking his head. "This is about them. About what's best for them. Clara told me everything. You're their father, Alex. You have a right to be in their lives. I need to know you're not going to hurt them, that you're not going to hurt her again." Alex looked this man in the eye, this history teacher who had taught him more about being a father in a few days than he'd learned in a lifetime. "I swear to you," Alex said with all the conviction in his soul, "I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the man they deserve." David nodded slowly, a silent understanding passing between them. They weren't rivals. They were two men on opposite sides of the same equation, and the solution had to be the happiness of 3 small children. The transplant was a success. Leo's body accepted the new marrow, and slowly, miraculously, he began to get better. Color returned to his cheeks. His energy levels crept up. The day he was finally discharged from the hospital, the whole complicated, messy, beautiful family was there. Alex didn't try to force a fairy tale ending. He didn't ask Clara to come back to him. He didn't try to push David out. He did something much harder. He learned to fit in. He bought a modest house in their neighborhood in Oak Park, trading his penthouse view for a backyard with a swing set. He started attending parent-teacher conferences. He learned Noah's favorite dinosaur and that Chloe was allergic to strawberries. He taught Leo how to throw a baseball, his movements, patient and focused. Some weekends David was there, and the two men would stand on the sidelines of a soccer game, a quiet truce between them, both watching the children they loved. Clara, free from the crushing weight of her secret and financial instability, began to smile more, the tired lines around her eyes softening. Their family wasn't traditional. It was a patchwork quilt of past hurts and new hopes. Alexander Sterling, the billionaire tycoon, had lost his sterile kingdom, but in its place, he had found something infinitely more valuable. He had found his way home. It wasn't a penthouse or a mansion, but a noisy, chaotic house in the suburbs, filled with the laughter of the children he almost never knew. He had learned that the price of a family wasn't paid with money, but with time, with humility, and with a love he was finally learning how to give. 6 months after the transplant, the rhythm of their lives had settled into a fragile new normal. Autumn had laid a carpet of gold and crimson over the quiet streets of Oak Park. Alex's house, a handsome brick colonial, just 4 blocks from Clara's apartment, had become the nexus of their shared world. The sprawling backyard, once immaculately manicured by a landscaping service, was now perpetually littered with soccer balls, half-finished crayon masterpieces, and the occasional abandoned superhero cape. Today was Noah's 6th birthday. The yard was a chaotic symphony of childish shrieks and laughter. Alex, wearing a pair of faded jeans and a simple grey t-shirt, was manning the grill. He flipped burgers with a practiced ease that would have stunned his board of directors. He'd discovered a surprising satisfaction in simple, tangible tasks. He knew that Leo liked his burger with only ketchup. Chloe needed hers cut in half, and Noah, the birthday boy, insisted on a pickle slice placed directly in the center. These small details were a currency more valuable to him now than any stock option. Clara moved through the party, a warm smile on her face as she navigated the swarm of 6-year-olds. She caught Alex's eye as he plated a fresh batch of burgers, and she gave him a small, genuine smile. It was a look of shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the beautiful chaos they had created. David was there too. He was organizing a game of tag, his laughter as loud as the children's. He was still a constant, a rock. But Alex noticed a subtle shift in the dynamic. Before David had been the undisputed male authority figure. Now there were two. The children, with their innocent and absolute logic, had divided the roles. David was Daddy David, the fun one who lived with Mommy in their minds and was always there. Alex was Daddy Alex, the one who saved Leo and had the big yard with the best swing set. The tension was a low hum beneath the surface of the party, noticeable only to the three adults at its center. It was in the way David's smile tightened slightly when Chloe ran to Alex first to show him a drawing. It was in the careful measured space Clara maintained between the two men. And it was in the profound ache of longing Alex felt whenever he saw Clara and David share a quiet moment, a reminder of the life they had built in his absence. As the sun began to dip below the trees, casting long shadows across the yard, the party wound down. Parents collected their sugar-fueled children, and soon only their small group remained amidst the debris of a successful birthday. "All right, team," Clara announced, clapping her hands. "Time to pack it in. We'll do cake and presents back at the apartment." The triplets groaned in unison. "But Daddy Alex's yard is bigger," Leo protested. "We can have cake here next time," Alex said, smoothly, ruffling Leo's hair. "Your mum has it all set up at home. Go on, get your things." As the kids gathered their party favors, David began helping Alex clear the paper plates and cups. "You've done a great job with this place," David said, his tone carefully neutral. "The kids love it." "It's for them," Alex replied simply. There was no animosity between them, only a complex, unspoken rivalry where the prize was a past neither of them could fully claim. Clara returned with the kids, each holding a goodie bag. "Okay, we're off. Thanks again for everything today, Alex. It was perfect." "Anytime," he said, his heart clenching at the finality of the evening. This was the part he still hadn't gotten used to, the separation. He was a part of their lives, but only up to a point. When the sun went down, they returned to the world that didn't include him. Noah, his face serious under his paper birthday crown, looked up at him. "Daddy Alex, why don't you come with us for cake?" The innocent question landed like a stone in the quiet yard. All three adults froze. "Yeah," Chloe chimed in. "We can watch the new Stargazers movie after..." Alex knelt down, his gaze soft. "I'd love to, sweetie, but Mommy and Daddy David have a special birthday plan for Noah tonight. I'll see you all tomorrow for soccer practice." "Okay." Noah's face fell, but he nodded. Alex watched them go, a small procession heading down the sidewalk. Clara in the lead, David's hand resting gently on her back, the three children chattering between them. They looked like a family, a complete one, and he was left standing alone in the cooling twilight, the ghost at the feast. Later that night, after the cake was eaten and the children were finally asleep, the conversation David had been dreading finally happened. He stood at the window of Clara's cozy living room, watching the traffic pass on the street below. "He's good with them," David said quietly. Clara curled up on the sofa, knew he wasn't just talking about the party. "Yes, he is." David turned to face her, his expression etched with a sadness that broke her heart. "I see the way you look at him sometimes, Clara. When you think no one's watching, it's the same way you used to look at me." "David, don't," she whispered, sitting up. "No, we have to talk about this," he insisted, his voice gentle but firm. "I love you, and I love those kids. For 3 years, that was enough. But he's their father. He saved Leo's life. He's not the monster from your stories anymore. He's changed, and he's here. What we have is real," she said, her voice pleading. "You and me. You've been here for everything. The scraped knees, the nightmares, the report cards. He can't just swoop in and erase that. He's not erasing it. David said, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. He's just completing the picture, and I'm not sure where I fit in anymore. Every time he's here, I feel like I'm borrowing time. I love you enough to want you to be happy, Clara. Truly happy. And I need to ask you, and I need you to be honest. Are you still in love with him? The question hung in the air, between them, terrifying and necessary. Clara looked at the life she had built, this safe, warm haven with this good, kind man. And she thought of Alex, the new Alex patient and repentant, the man who shared her children's DNA, and a history of pain and passion she could never share with anyone else. The answer was a confusing, tangled mess in her own heart. I don't know, she admitted, the words tasting like betrayal. God, David, I don't know. But Alexander Sterling's journey wasn't about finding his children, it was about finding himself. He learned that true wealth isn't measured in stock portfolios or corporate takeovers, but in scraped knees, bedtime stories, and the unconditional love of a family. Their story isn't over. It's a messy, complicated and beautiful work, in progress, a testament to the fact that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. It shows us that second chances are real, but they have to be earned, not bought. What did you think of Alex's transformation? Do you think Clara did the right thing by hiding the triplets? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like and share it, share it with someone who loves a powerful story of redemption. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that explore the depths of the human heart. Thank you for listening.